Hello, my name is Hiraku Suzuki. I am an artist. Drawing, especially the expanded region of drawing, is the area of my specialty. I have been strongly inspired by Tim's book, and I'm one of the receivers of his inspiration. Tim's books are read widely by people in the creative domain. His books have been quite influential, especially for those who draw. His books have imparted much inspirations, and also younger generations, artists in the making, have also found much inspiration in his books for the following reasons. His book is not to be simply read. It is thought-provoking, practice-provoking book. By reading his book, I not only can gain new information, but also can gain new experience. It helps me remember things. It helps me recall from inside, from within, if you will. Doing so, you can attain a higher resolution of your understanding of the world, and that I think is the experience many people find when they read Tim's books. With higher resolution, you are nudged to go into practice by walking or by drawing. So Tim's books serves as a catalyst to trigger people to take a journey of practice. Lines was published in 2007, and the Japanese translation was published in 2012. It is an enlargement of drawing, I would argue. And I think that is how many people embraced it as such. So, what is drawing? Ever since Renaissance, sketches, paintings, or just doodles are often defined as drawings. And then if you draw something, they would praise that your drawing is good or bad. But Tim looked at drawing as an ongoing process. And that is how he put it. There are two definitions of drawing. One is to leave behind traces. The second is to manipulate intentions. These are, thread, to manipulate the thread. Correction. So these are the two definitions Tim provided. So leaving behind traces overlaps with the process of writing, and manipulation of threads may also include some act of weaving. And engraving the traces may also have an impactful musical aspect to it, and threads and weaving, or manipulation of threads, if you will, is more like a strings musical chords, or strings musical instruments, if you will. So, as such, it is related to music as well. The act of drawing or the definition of drawing has been expanded in times of space and time. In his book, Lines, these the book not only defined these acts of drawing, but the book also liberated, and this is more like a jumping board or runway, if you will, for art practitioner. Tim's book served as a springboard or a runway. Through this runway, art practitioners can take off into many different directions. So it was a ripple of lines. However, it has grown into bigger waves because it is happening across the globe. And I'm not a professor. I'm one of the many practitioners amongst these waves, a small being. Tim, sitting across from me, real time, pondering and making, and other books have been published. Life of Lines, Correspondence. I believe Tim, too, have been in the process of drawing lines. And today, I am enjoying crossing this experience of crossing the line with his line. For Tim, the act of drawing or the word drawing, Tim is an anthropologist. In driving into the world of anthropology, he used the aspect of drawing as a door through which to go into anthropology. And that is how he said when he talked about his act of redrawing anthropology. I believe that he is using lines to expand the scope of anthropology. From a different point of view, as a person who draws, through anthropology, the act of drawing is being redrawn. Tim's anthropological viewpoint is redrawing the scope of drawing to include walking or to include the act of singing or writing or knowing, if you will. And all these activities is a form of drawing. And not only that, not only human, but also non-human perspective. For example, there are bacteria in the ground. There are roots in the ground as well. And on the surface is a snail leaving traces on the ground. And the plants also grow into the atmosphere, and bees being around. And also space, and also there are plants that are moving. So there are lots of lines in the universe of ours.
The outer space per se makes lines, and the act of drawing by human beings would be woven into all the lines that are drawn in the world. through Tim-san's book, we've learned that. And what I consider most important here is that there are diverse activities such as walking and others, but what is most important is that you are alive. You are being alive. Because drawing is to be alive. To be alive means that spatially and temporarily you draw lines, and drawing means that indeed it is to be alive it in itself. And why is this important? Because, of course, right now we are faced with various global crises. This is the world we live in which drawing will need to be redrawn. The drawings we have need to be revisited as ways of our living. But of course, to begin with, drawing and until 2 days ago, I was I was visiting various caves to study cave murals. And 20, 30,000 years ago, people have been drawing those murals to survive. And we were in the glacier period. That must have been a very crucial crisis for the people living at the time. But people have drawn in order to live. So this line, this very line, or I would call it a tube, or the line of relationship, or the tube of relationship, is what I like to have a dialogue with Tim-san and try to deepen this perspective. If I may.
Well, thank you so much, Hiraku-san. Let me start with the people you've just been meeting. They lived a long time ago, say 30, 40,000 years ago, and were creating what we see now on the walls of caves. And today we say, oh, these are drawings. Maybe they're drawings of animals or of humans. But actually, they were not drawn in the way we think about drawing, that somebody took a pen and drew a line on the cave wall. They took the bone of an animal, which was hollow inside, and they filled the hollow with colored pigment, and they blew, so the pigment would fly onto the wall of the cave, and that was the way they created the image. And so that's a challenge for me, because I think, how can I think of a line when actually the line is not on the cave wall itself? It's actually the movement of the liquid going through the tube. Sorry, it's going off. And so that's where I found your work so exciting, because I had not before thought of the idea that in the first place, the line could be a tube, and that a tube is something that allows for the passage of some substance along a line, but is nevertheless enclosed within it. So here's the tube, and here's something going through, and there's the line on the cave wall there. So I would like to ask you, what led you to move from the line to the tube?
はい、ありがとうございます。これ、先月出た僕の
This is the book I wrote.
ここにティムさん
And Tim-san, you send us a comment for the publication that I have made.
この
This is the title of the book. This is the title of the book, and you send some comments about this. Dots, lines. dots, lines, plane to tube. This is actually originated from Kandinsky's dots and lines as the idea. Now, caves have its shape, and within caves there are no planes as such, because caves, of course, have a floor and ceiling, have no floors and ceilings and a wall. It's all inside a tube, and within the tube, humans began to draw or draw pictures. Now let's start with Kandinsky. What Kandinsky said was that the movement of a dot from A to B, by the motion you can draw a line. Point A and point B are connected, and as such a line is drawn. However, in order to connect the dots and dots, there always need to be another function, which is the separation or division, intermittence. By connecting these divisions, the space here are divided or separated. Jacques Derrida said that too. The lines would separate itself. In other words, the line, if it is considered a plane, all lines can be a border. And on the surface of the Earth, if you are to draw a line, something and something get connected, and then they are separated, divided more and more. And what the division leads to is possession. For example, in Africa, you see the borderlines very straight, and that is because the lines have been drawn to demark the national borders. They use the pens and rulers to draw the national borders. Therefore, when a line is drawn on the surface, it stands up as a perpendicular line. For example, now in Gaza, what is happening? Well, in Gaza, there are lines drawn on the land on which walls are built, and inside and outside are being separated, divided. It is not just a border, but the gender division, the religious division, even art are being divided. It is accelerated. Now, what is a tube then? A line drawn with a tube would go through this, penetrate through. From here to here you draw a line. The line you have drawn would take off from here. So the pen here itself, it's hollow. So let's consider plants. They have tubular structures because they have to carry nutrition and water from underground up in the air. So you need tubes. Tubes do not exist if it is only on the Earth's surface. It has to be connected with underground and up in the air. Different dimensions are linked, and communication occurs with the tube. Now, considering this, I would say you have point A and B connected with a line, and against this line, for example, earlier I said we are to live. Now, if this is true, we live to die. However, to live is like this.
How Clay was talking about taking the line for a walk. You draw these lines, and this line is not closed. It is connecting. So to live is to know that there are world before and after death or life. Also, some musical instruments are tubular in its structure. So this is the concept of tube. In Life of Lines,
But there's a difference, isn't there? Just for a moment. There's a difference between thinking of the plant as a tube, right? So here's a plant and it's sprouting in the ground and it's sending roots. Oops, I'm getting the right. Here's a plant and it's got, and here's the ground and here are the roots under the ground. And you could say that all of these are tubes and it allows the moisture to go up to there. But then there's a difference between that and the pen, when you pointed out that the pen is a tube. So there it is. And the ink goes down the tube, and then you draw a line with... So then the tube itself is perpendicular to the line that is drawn on the surface. So it's different from the growing plant somehow, because the plant is not drawing in the same way. The plant is drawing liquid up from the roots. The plant is like a kind of pen that doesn't move because it doesn't wander around on the surface of the earth drawing lines. Isn't there a difference there?
now we are on this plane, horizontal plane, and we are drawing on this horizontal sheet of paper. But as you have rightly pointed out, those cave paintings, people were perpendicular, and many people were drawing pictures towards the sky, if you will, or onto the ceilings. This is a spray. This is a can of spray, and it can be drawn higher up. And humans are also tubular. So those mural paintings were drawn onto the ceilings, in many cases, spraying the pigments onto the ceilings. So the act of drawing, I am drawing on a horizontally placed sheet of paper or the perpendicular canvas, if you will. Way before the invention of these, people started drawing, as was the case with the cave painting. So horizontal or vertical is
In
not...
that case, we could say we could say that the tree that has its trunk coming up, here's the trunk of the tree and its branches and its leaves. The tree is actually painting the sky. It's painting the dome of the sky with its leaves. I'm drawing the liquid up from the earth, and so the tree is like the paintbrush, like this one here. So it's painting up here. Yeah, is that right?
そうです。で、はい、それでいいです。
Exactly. Yes, towards the sky. Trees are drawing the lines. And be it subground, or there are also lines in the water as well. They are not trees. This is seaweed or algae. These two exist in the water, drawing lines in the water. So Marcel Morse, Tim quoted, it was about the sea anemones. In Life of Lines, you talk about the episode of sea anemones and octopus. And started talking about aquatic lines. These drawings or lines are tentacles. Excuse me. Correction. And if you look at all those plants, the tip of the sprouts are trying to find something to cling onto. That, I think, is the line of life.
But then I was thinking about the lines that you get when here you drop your pebble in the surface of the water and you get waves coming out, and these lines don't really exist in the surface of the water. They're just the way we draw the waves. So this is different from the lines that go out, that kind of connect. I don't know. We have something like a spider's web there. There's a mixture of lines that are going out from the center and lines that are surrounding the center. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just a thought.
なるほど。面白いですね。
Interesting. André Lenoir-Gourlan said that the most primitive drawing was more like centered towards the outer, including but not limited to the ripple effects on the water. The lights are imparted and diverge. And these circles and linear lines have made me recall something. It's like Tim also mentioned that, well, you did lots of drawing in your books. And I have several favorite drawings of yours. And I think that the circles and straight lines were used to represent breathing. Do you remember? So that was also the combination of circles and linear lines, if I remember correctly.
And what was a puzzle for me was how to connect lines and the weather. I felt intrinsically that there's some sort of connection between thinking of a world that's made up of lines and thinking of a world of weather, of wind and rain and atmosphere. And the problem was how to connect the two. And then I thought it's a bit like a sailing ship, that the sailing ship takes the wind in its sail and then draws a line through the water in the wake of the ship, so that the movement of the atmosphere that is very difficult to describe in a linear way. It's difficult to describe the wind with lines. You could draw sort of something like that and say that's what the wind looks like. But the wind is not really a linear thing, but it can be converted into lines. And I thought the same thing happens when we breathe, that we breathe in, and then we breathe out. So that the breathing in is a sort of gathering movement, and breathing out is then a movement of propulsion. So I drew something like this, that this is breathing in, and that's breathing out. And then this is breathing in, and then you breathe out again. And so it goes on in that way. So each of these is a breath. And then there's breathing out. So breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, and so on. And that's the way in which lines and the atmosphere are connected. But actually, it gets back to your tubes, because I think that because the tube gives another beautiful way of showing how breath and line can be connected.
ちょっとじゃあ僕今呼吸をしながら
Well, I am breathing as I'm drawing this. Let's see.
That's it. Exactly.
こうなんですけど、これは
This is what I would draw. But when you drew this walking to walk in a passage, you have made this drawing, and you're looking at the walking person horizontally, sideways. But if you look at this person from frontways, then earlier you showed us you've drawn a ripple image. Can you come back like this and show us the ripples on the water that you have drawn earlier? Right. This is, you're looking at a person from the front, or the line of the person who are walking away while breathing may look like this. Or it could be only one direction, a lateral direction. We are looking at this line, but stereoscopically, three-dimensionally, it may be viewed as a section of a tube.
So I don't know how to draw this, but the tube would go. So this is in cross section. So here's the tube, and this is what's happening inside it, and it's going along like that. And it means that and of course that is what is happening in a musical instrument, in a trumpet or a clarinet. There are pulses of air that are going through the tube, and those pulses are then what create the sound you hear. So you wouldn't simply have one. It's not like water flowing through a pipe where it's just flowing gradually without any change. The fact that it's going that it has a rhythm to it that gives it a particular sound. Inspiration and expiration, exactly. It's that cycle. And I think that alternation of inspiration and expiration is kind of fundamental to life. You were talking earlier about the slugs and how the slug leaves its trail on the ground, but you imagine a snail. So here it is. There's the snail, and it to move forward, it pulls its back in, so it's like that, and then it pushes its front out. So it's doing a sort of alternation of pulling in and pushing out, and that way is able to move forward, which is why I think it's the same thing. There's inspiration and expiration, pull, push, and to move.
そうですね。 管楽器でいうと、
Right. With the pipes, the wind instruments. For example, saxophones. You go in, breathe in, and sound out. But what happens here is that it may come back here, or it may go out as an expiration. It may be inhaled by somebody else. This may be a cycle that could be generated. So, for me, I thought it was interesting because John Coltrane is the saxophone player, and he said that music is not moving from the beginning to the end, but rather it starts in the middle and it moves to backward and forward. In other words, he means that there's circulation. The air circulates in the pipe or tube. As a result, music is born. So, what John Coltrane said was that when after he plays on the stage, after he goes back to his room, he keeps on playing because there's no end to the cycle of inspiration and expiration. Within this cycle, to live or to draw may be understood. That's what I would like to do. That's what I believe is possible to do. Your line is really good. I really like it. It looks like I would like to draw some branches here, tree branches. As you continue to draw, what we had been expressing verbally may be sensed. If you use branches like this is no longer a snail, but this side. You push, but then there's pull force on the other end. In other words, when you draw, it is not a unilateral force, but there is a force applied from the other end, and as a result, it progresses. Sometimes it breaks.
So there's in drawing, as in anything, there's always a tension, I think, but not a tension between the one force that is trying to run ahead into the distance, and another force that is holding things back, so that when if I'm drawing a line, okay, my imagination is shooting off in the front, but but the friction of the pen on the page holds me back. So that there's the force of the friction on the page pulling one way, and the force of imagination pulling in the other, and the pen is somewhere in the middle. And maybe that's also what you're getting at there, that it's being pulled forward and back at the same time.
Well, bidirectional vector occurring in here, and that is probably the essence of drawing. In other words, On this end, you are drawing. You are drawing like this. Look at this point here. We are drawing here, but at the same time, it's being drawn. Because here you are drawing the world, but the world is indeed. Through this contact point, it is drawing myself, my presence. So this is a bidirectional vector that is being produced, which means drawing.
But the question then is it any different when you write? Is there a difference between drawing and writing in that respect? Because I think that suppose that I'm drawing, or suppose that I'm writing, and I'm writing my name here very slowly, very deliberately. So, Ingold. Then I lose track of where I am, and then you say Timothy who, and because you suddenly find you start off with these very deliberate lines, and then it becomes illegible, and then maybe it goes back to, oh, there I was, and some people argue that at this moment you read but don't see, and at this point here you can see but you don't read, and then again you're reading but you don't see. That when you see a line that's being written, you read it but you don't see it, as though reading and seeing were in contradiction with one another. I don't think that's true, actually, but many theorists say it is. And I wonder that if you're writing in Japanese, whether you would have that same sense of incompatibility between reading and seeing. What would your experience be?
はい。それに関しては2つの。
I think there are two ways to put it. First, let's talk about Japanese. In Japanese, write and draw are used the same phonetic word of kaku. The term kaku originated from the term scratching, or hikkaku in Japanese. So, it is a subtractive action of scratching. So painting, you place different layers, but scratching is different because it is subtractive rather than additive. Tim wrote in his book repeatedly about the origin of the term write, or uritan, an ancient Japanese English inscription onto the slate. There are certain overlaps. The same is true not only in Japanese but also in German. Kafka's handwriting looked like this. So this is really Kafka-like, your name in this specific part. But Kafka said kritzeln, or scratching, when he writes something. So the reading and seeing in Kafka's handwriting, or drawing and writing, are fully overlapped in his way of thinking. Put it differently, talking about the cave paintings or famous well-known animals are often the motive of drawings in the cave. And back then, they also used to draw lots of signals like this. Pondogome had these symbols, which are yet to be fully deciphered. Andre Guran and others believes that these are ancient or the origins of the letters. So this is both writing and drawing. So if you go back to the ancient history, you can see that. But you can also see similar act in children. Children draw doodles like this in their ages when they're 2 or 3 years old. They draw like this. So what I'm personally interested is this specific section, these sections.
The bits where you're not quite sure whether it's one or the other, where it could be writing, but maybe it isn't, and it's turning from one to the other. I remember when I went to the kindergarten and was first learning to write, and I decided I would write my A instead of like that. I would write it like this. And my teacher was angry and said, that's not the way you should write. I told my teacher, but that's modern art, because my elder sister was interested at that time. She was 13 years older than me and was interested in modern art and was producing incomprehensible squiggles. So I thought that that's the way to be an artist, is to write like that. So now, of course, we have this in our email addresses. So perhaps we should write our email addresses in a more interesting way. So instead of my email address is this. But so I can do it on a keyboard, but it would be much more interesting, wouldn't it, if my email address was somewhere in Scotland. Oh, sorry, it's gone off the page. Somewhere in Scotland. Anyway, that's it.
それで言うと、アットマークも
The at mark symbol, or like it thumbs up pictogram, has been around some 35,000 years ago in one of the caves. There was this symbol. This is how ancient humans just gave like it button. I just saw it just recently in there, in one of those famous caves. Of course, vectors, arrow shooting up high into the sky, may have similar meanings. In some other caves, you may find an at mark of just like the one Tim just drew. No one knows. Either case, I just touched upon the children's drawing and cave paintings. In a plus-size book, who is famous for his book Graffiti, understanding childhood helps people understand prehistoric way of thought process. Cave murals have been found by children. Glasgow. It was a discovery by children.
いいですね。ティムさんのスプレー
So Tim's spray technique is remarkable.
そうA は牛の頭
A start with the cow hand, as it says, ox hand or cow hands, whatever. Ox hand. The horn.
ところで質疑応答し
we were supposed to do some Q&A, aren't we? What shall we do? Shall we just end here?
continue drawing.
We've got 5 minutes.
そうですね。あと5分になりましたが、
That's correct. We only have 5 minutes, but why don't we try to see if there are any questions? Because we would really love to continue to see the drawing, but he has to be on he has to catch an airplane. So we have limited time. Anybody who would like to volunteer to ask a question here? Questions the question should be in verbally, not in line. Either way. Okay, anybody with a question? No questions? Thank you very much. It was a very enjoyable, very strange image. I'm a linguist. Now, dance. I thought maybe dance has something to do with this because drawing and writing had been compared, but that is the same as dancing because you move your physical body. The lines and the dots and lines there are two-dimensional, but you do draw three-dimensional drawings, and they all come as three-dimensional product. So in the three-dimensional world, you have described the word this in the word tube, I think. If you go back into the more ancient era, it may all go back to dancing, to writing, to drawing. They all go back to dancing. I've been trying to think of this in three-dimensional aspect, but between two-dimensional image and three-dimensional image, I seem to be a little confused. I'm not sure I understand, but if you introduce the concept of dance, it may be a way to look at it. What do you think, both of you?
I think dance is fundamentally about gesture, the body gestures with arms, feet, whatever. And then the question is whether this gesture leaves a trace of some kind. Some gestures do and some gestures don't. I don't think the number of dimensions is really important. That it only becomes important if we assume that that the trace is being left on a plane surface, but the surfaces of the world are not plane. There are all sorts of surfaces. So I think we can forget about the difference between two-dimensional and three-dimensional, leave that to the mathematicians, and concentrate simply on the relationship between the gesture, the bodily movement, and the trace, that is the mark that is made in some part of the environment. Would you add to that?
まあ、僕もI agree なんですけども、
I agree, but let me add a couple of points, if I may. Trisha Brown is the name of a dancer. She's also a choreographer. She, onto the fingertips, grabs the jars so that she can leave some traces onto the plane. The reason she had to do that is because she confronts a strong definition or differences between two and three-dimensional world. But once in an environment, there isn't such a difference. In a cave, you really have to crawl a very small cave, whose diameter is only 1 meter or so. So it was almost like a dancing onto the ground. And throughout the surface of the cave, you were able to see all those drawings. In that sense, writing, drawing, and dancing are the same. But if you try to reduce that into a two-dimensional act, I think they started to confine it into a 2D world at a much later.
じゃあそろそろお時間になってしまったのでちょっと大変
I'm afraid that it is now time. Time is up and we need to close this session. Thank you very much for your insightful discussion and wonderful drawings.